All right, here we go. So, hi again. Today our topic is take a deep dive into constructionism with Mark Barnett. What we're going to do today is first, I will give you a little introduction about BSD education, and then pass it over to Mark to take us through the main content today. So just to give you a little background about myself, I am Eva Young. I am the Director of Education here at BSD, and I work with Mark in the education team to produce our curriculum, do the research, deliver it, develop it. So any feedback or any questions you have for us, please feel free to put it in the chat box throughout, and we'll have some time in the end for Q&A. So a little bit about BSD. So BSD, we are a group of educators, entrepreneurs, and technologists. We come together to design, develop, and deliver our programs of learning to support teachers to bring relevant digital skills into the classroom. So to create real impact, what we have found really works is that we support teachers with our engaging curriculum. We provide the professional development and training and support that is needed to deliver on our learning platform, BSD Online. So you may wonder what BSD stands for. So BSD stands for Build Something Different, and our curriculum is built around diverse digital projects to give students the opportunity to explore the connections between digital skills and different industries. So students will encounter projects like websites, web publishing, video games. We have projects in AI and virtual reality, e-commerce, and we hope to help students make those connections and learn about these tools and projects and see how they connect with industry, as well as how to, and we also incorporate, digital citizenship into that learning as well. So without further ado, I'll pass it on to Mark. He'll talk about himself a little bit and give you folks, we'll intro us into the main topic.
All right, thanks for that intro, Eva. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and pick up where you left off, which was here. Yeah, so my name is Mark. I'm the Vice President of Education at BSD, and along with Eva and the rest of the education team, we develop, which is now over 600 hours of curriculum that we have designed, covering all of the different topics that Eva mentioned, from web design to entrepreneurship. So my role at the company is to make sure that all of that curriculum is grounded in sound pedagogy, education research, so that what we're delivering is actually useful to students and to teachers in the classroom. I'm also currently a PhD student, and the topic of my PhD is artificial intelligence in education. And I'm also studying in the lineage of constructionism, which is the main topic for today, and also part of the reason why I am currently living in Thailand, which I'll get into a little bit more as we go along today. So I want to give just kind of a brief history of constructionism. Those of you that are aware of this term, or those of you who've never heard of this term, constructionism, I'm going to kind of unpack as we go along in the webinar today a little bit more about it, but I'm not going to inundate you with academic jargon, and because the term constructionism sounds like one of those academic terminologies that would require a PhD and reading of several books to understand. But I mean, you can go that route like I'm doing, but I'll try to break it down for an easy way to understand. So constructionism began as an idea from this gentleman here in the picture on the left, whose name is Seymour Papert. And Seymour Papert was studying how children most learn effectively. And so he started his career as a mathematician. And so he wanted to study how students best learn math. And so he went to study with the famous Swiss child psychologist Jean Piaget. If you're an educator and you've gone through your educator credentialing program, at some point you probably learned about Jean Piaget. Eva, do you remember, if you were getting your PGCE or maybe your diploma or whatever, you learned about John Piaget?
Yes, one of the first few lessons.
Yeah, I mean,
Both in, yeah,
it's like a staple, right? It's just part of
yeah,
the curriculum as an educator. Right?
yeah.
So Seymour Papert studied with John Piaget because they were both interested in these ideas of how children best learn. But Seymour Papert kind of had, more specific ideas about how do children learn math, and then how do they also learn what eventually came to be called computational thinking. So what is constructionism? So this is kind of like the best general description of constructionism. I'm just going to read it here. You can follow along. But constructionism says that learning is most effective when students are active in making meaningful objects and artifacts and are able to draw their own conclusions through experimentation across multiple media, thus constructing new relationships with knowledge in the process. So if you break down the word constructionism, the root word is to construct, all right? And so that could be that students are constructing physical artifacts like robots or, like papers, documents, that kind of stuff. But it could also be digital things. So at BSD, all of our curriculum is delivered in a digital format. So we're talking about digital artifacts, which students eventually can put in their portfolio and so on. Now, I want to take constructionism one step further by describing the last part where it says, thus constructing new relationships with knowledge in the process. So Seymour Papert says, and through his research, that when children are building and making artifacts, that there are actually two versions of that artifact being created at the exact same time. One is the physical one or the digital one, like I mentioned earlier, and the other is the mental one. So anytime you're building something, you're building that version of it in your mind as well. So you can tinker with something in your mind before you make a change to it in the real world. And this process, this relationship between the real, the tangible, and the mental model is where the power of constructionism really comes into play. So that there's this idea of thinking and reflecting alongside the doing, which is where real learning actually happens. Real learning only happens in the mind of the learner. It doesn't happen in the textbook. It doesn't happen in the front of the classroom where the teacher is standing. It only happens in the mind of the learner. And so Seymour Papert was intrinsically interested in this idea, and he wanted to bring about new tools to explore this idea. So you can see in the photograph there, he's got this old robot. And this photograph was from the late 1960s, early 1970s, which explains the hairstyle and the shirt. But it kind of blows my mind to think that in the late 60s, people were thinking about computers and robotics and educational technology at a time before computers were really even widely available in schools. So he was a visionary and a pioneer in this field, and we can thank him for all of the current movements in education that are related to technology and robotics and computing and so on. So it was only natural that at BSD, we built a strong pedagogical foundation built on this idea of constructionism that Seymour Papert envisioned so many years ago. I put in quotations here at the bottom, Mindstorms. Some of you may have heard of Mindstorms, which was the name of his famous book that came out in 1980. But it's also the name of the Lego product of their robotics initiative, which Seymour Papert was involved in. So there's this long history of constructionism, which is kind of untold. And so today I want to help tell that story a little bit more for you. So there have been lots of education initiatives and products that have stemmed from the research in constructionism. So Seymour Papert became eventually a professor at MIT, and many of his students went on to further the constructionist education research with these different elements and different products. So you might recognize some of these things on the screen. I'm going to go one by one just to elaborate a little bit more. On the top left-hand corner, this is a Mindstorms robot, otherwise known as the Lego EV3 robotic system, which is currently used globally around the world in the first robotics competition, which is a competition where students program a robot to do certain tasks. And along the way, they're learning about important problems that exist in our world and how to use technology to solve those problems. This image here in the middle, maybe some of you have never seen this laptop before, but it was very popular in the late 90s and the early 2000s. It was called the One Laptop Per Child Project. And it was an initiative from MIT, and the goal was to produce a laptop that cost $100 and then provide that laptop to children all over the world in rural areas, in poor areas. And to some degree, that project was quite successful. There were thousands and thousands of laptops that were distributed in South America and Africa and all over the place. And the laptop contained within it a variety of constructionist-based learning materials, that students could do at their own pace. So it didn't have to be connected to the internet, although it could be to access other things. But it was a self-contained device that could be used for many different ways. And children used it to learn language, use it to learn math, use it to explore things, learn how to program, all kinds of stuff. Today, on the right-hand side, this is a picture of the microbit circuit board. The microbit circuit board was first co-organized with the BBC in the UK, in which they gave away thousands of these devices to students in the UK. And then it's kind of spread globally. And now the BBC microbit is used in classrooms all over the world. And it's a great low-cost introduction to physical computing and programming. And there's now kind of an architecture of different add-ons. So you can build robots out of these. You can turn them into electronic devices. There's just a wide variety of application of this circuit board. And the great thing is that they're very affordable. You can get one for under $20 or 20 euros. On the bottom left-hand side, this is a really cool invention literacy kit called the Makey Makey. It's got a funny name, but the tool has a lot of potential. Students are invited to think up clever ways for how to interact with the computer instead of using the keyboard and the mouse, which is why you see here, bananas. So you could interact with the computer using bananas or any other electrically conductive material. This picture here in the middle, black and white photograph, goes back to the early days of Seymour Papert's explorations with the turtle robot and the programming language that he and his team invented that was called Logo. And some of you may have experienced Logo as a child, programming it on an Apple II computer. If you were in elementary or middle school in the 80s and 90s, maybe you had that experience. And Logo lives on today through a programming language called Scratch. And so Scratch is a block-based programming language that has more visual elements than Logo had, but its influences are very noticeable. So you've probably heard of or seen some of these, but never really knew the deeper implication and the roots that were sprouted from the original ideas of constructionism. So we can see that constructionism has had a wide effect across the field of educational technology. And at BSD, we are weaved into this fabric along with all of these other, ways to work with students around education and technology. So I kind of shared some things, from the past, 20, 30 years, but constructionism is alive and well today. And there are many groups of educators all around the world who are still contributing to the body of knowledge and furthering what we know about how constructionism provides a quality way of teaching, and people are still doing research and sharing about it to this day. So the picture on the left here, this is with the FabLearn conference that happens all over the world every 2 years. Because of COVID, there hasn't been a recent one, but the last one I attended in Bangkok, it was FabLearn Asia in 2020, in which educators from all over the world came to share. And the great thing about FabLearn is that it also includes students. So students are a major part of the conference. They invite students to come and share what they've learned, how it was impactful and beneficial to them. And then recently, there's been a new book published called Designing Constructionist Futures. Eva, if you could drop a link into the chat to both of these. So the website to FabLearn will tell you about the FabLearn Global Initiative, how you can get involved, when the next conference is going to come up, because we're all looking forward to now that we can travel again and visit each other. and share. We can, there will be a new conference coming up soon. The dates to be determined, but will happen next year. And then the Designing Constructionist Futures book is a collection of articles and research papers over the last couple of years from contributors to the field of constructionism. And I highly recommend it because it kind of takes this constructionist perspective that really developed from the 1960s to 1980s and brings it forward into the modern digital age in which students are finally able to have computers in every classroom and so on. So what's really unique about constructionism is that it allows flexibility for interpretation. So Seymour Papert never in any of his books or any of his research or any of his writings did he ever write a definition to what constructionism is. So there's not like a codified definition. And he did this intentionally because part of the learning theory of constructionism is constructing your own meaning. So he thought it would be a clever way that people also have to construct their own meaning of what constructionism is. Now, of course, there's some boundaries and there's some limitations to that, and it's not just anything. So, but the interpretation is open for people to kind of add their own spice to it. And so what I really love about Thailand, and part of the reason why I decided to move here to do my research, is because Thailand has had a long-standing relationship with constructionism, and Seymour Papert visited Thailand many times to help set up schools and foundations and learning initiatives here. And so the Thai people and Thai educators have expanded upon the term constructionism. And if you read Thai, which I'm learning but not quite adequate at, if we translate it back to English, it means learning through creative construction and wisdom. So here's where Thailand has added their spice to it. They've added the and wisdom part to it. And so in the Thai culture, which is a Buddhist country, and Buddhism is interweaved into the fabric of life here in Thailand. And so wisdom really comes from the Buddhist perspective of wisdom, which is more closely related to mindfulness. And so in constructionism, students are expected to come up with mindful solutions to problems, thinking about the human and thinking about the needs of the environment and so on. So I really like this aspect, and I really like how constructionism is open to these different flavors and interpretations. And I like to learn about how other cultures and other groups have also added their own little flavor and spice to it. And at BSD, Eva, I would say that our flavor and our spice to this is like learning how to code and program in a project-based manner. And Eva's had some experience teaching in this style with her students. So Eva, what do you, how do students respond to our spice of constructionism of teaching through projects?
I think on a practical sense, the students get an opportunity to build a portfolio, which is so important nowadays. And for them to actually then see what they have built, they have that emotional connection with it. And I think the way that we approach our learning as well, we bring in that emotion and mindfulness into our teaching as well, because we want students to make projects that has impact. Of course, like there's some fun into it, of course, but but we want them to always see how it connects. So with my older students and in high school, when they build projects, we always keep asking why are we building this? And at first they're like, I don't know, it's just fun because I want to, and then we use that opportunity, we do a deep dive into asking more questions. And that has benefited them in a way that I think so far, like you have explained to us, is that it's not just a physical product. There's so much learning that's happening up here that they have found great success now in starting their own web development business and everything. So because they understand the connection and applying that kind of empathy and mindfulness into what they build. So
And
Yeah, I
Eva,
think
do you
it's great
think
to see.
if those same students had learned through like a textbook, would had there been the same result?
No, definitely not, because I guess referring to my own experience as well, like looking at different subject areas as well, like math and or chemistry. Like I keep looking back and saying, like, if it was taught in a way to help me make meaning and help me connect why math or chemistry is important, I would have felt so much more engaged. Because how I learned maths was like you just go through workbooks and then
Yeah.
there's problems inside. You fill it in and do it. And I'm just like, why? This is
Yeah.
hard and why? um, so yeah, same for my students. If they just learn through a textbook, it's just more about getting the right answers, um, and what other people define as the correct answer. And they never kind of have that ownership in the knowledge, um,
Yeah.
that they're learning.
Well, to me, like constructionism really, if you just strip it down away from the academic verbiage and all that, it's really like just common sense learning. It's like the way you would learn naturally. You know, it's just
Mm,
it's learning by doing. Sometimes you fail. Sometimes that failure leads towards greater learning, greater
yeah,
potential. And sometimes we laugh about this with the other researchers in the field of constructionism that educators have to have some kind of system and some kind of like methodology, or it has to be proven by research in order for us to believe it. But if we were to take all that away, it's just no nonsense learning. It's just learning
yeah,
the natural way that human beings learn.
hmm,
Yeah.
yeah,
So in this webinar, I can't possibly cover all of it. Okay. So I have written a 3-part series on constructionism, and this was part of my PhD research, but I wrote it instead of in an academic journal, which is full of jargon and other people's words. I kind of broke it down and gave my story of how I came to understand constructionism. And then I also, during this process, interviewed other researchers, students of Seymour Papert, his colleagues, and just to get a broader understanding. And so the articles are interwoven with my research and also those interviews. So Eva, if you could just share the link to the articles. They're on Medium, so they're free. You can access them, and they're quite long. So you might want to carve away an hour or so to read all 3 of them, or you can read one and then read the others later. But it goes into the history, a brief history, a little bit more in detail than I shared earlier. But then it also goes into like the social theory of constructionism and how it's broader than just an education theory. What are the benefits of constructionism? What are some things that are going on in constructionism today? And then, like any good researcher, I also provide you with some criticisms. So, there has been some research, and there have been opposing views to constructionism, of which I share for you to read and draw your own conclusions, because naturally that would be the constructionist way, for you to read it, interpret it yourself, and come up with your own conclusions. So yeah, take a chance, read those, check it out, and let me know. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me at BSD or through Medium or whatever. All right, so now let's take it a step further and talk about constructionism beyond just theory, but constructionism in action. So in the theory of constructionism, as an educational kind of foundation, we can describe technologies as a constructionist technology. And so in order for something to fit that term, a constructionist technology, it must meet 3 areas. The first area is that it must be very easy to get started. That means that anybody can just jump into it and start learning right away. If you go back to my examples that I shared earlier with microbit and the 1 laptop per child and the first Lego League, all of those are really easy to just jump into. But all of those also have room to go deeper. So if you want, you can do very complex things and learn really deep concepts. Sometimes we refer to this as low floors and high ceilings. That means it's easy to enter and you can go as high as you want. The last thing is that they should be designed for play. And Seymour Papert had a very unique way of describing play. Play is, just going outside and kicking a ball around and having fun. But he liked this term called hard fun, which describes the joy that comes from doing difficult things. And so this type of play is a bit more structured, in which you are put into a situation where you might face something that's challenging. But because the fun nature of that challenging experience, you want to push through and actually learn how to do it, learn how to accomplish. For me, I always relate this back to like learning how to play an instrument. It's always difficult at first, and you might have some success early on, and that feels good. And you're like, oh, wow, like maybe I can do this. And then, you practice a more complex skill, like soloing on the guitar is much more complex than just playing backing chords, which is the level that I'm still at. But it's hard and it's fun. So I'm challenged, but I want to keep learning. So I think everybody has had some experience like that, where you felt challenged, but you wanted to continue learning. So I think that's the sweet sauce of constructionism, because it's like there's this intrinsic motivator that we have in ourselves that we want to do difficult things. And so a constructionist technology blends all of this together. Easy to get started. You can go as deep as you want. It's going to be fun and challenging at the same time. So if you were to apply these three domains to all of the things that I shared earlier, the microbit, the Lego robotics, the one laptop per child, they all meet these three domain criteria. So here's a quote that I often share from Papert. He says that rather than pushing children to think like adults, we might do better to remember that they are great learners and try harder to be more like them. And so I feel that oftentimes as educators, we come to the classroom with an idea that we as the educators have all of the knowledge, and that children are empty vessels, and it's our job to fill their little heads with knowledge. But I like Papert's view, and this is my view as well, is that they already have a lot inside of them. They're already great learners. It's us who need to learn more like them, because we have been indoctrinated by modern learning systems that make us think that we have to have textbooks, and make us think that we have to get a PhD in order to be special or knowledgeable about a topic. But students don't think that way. They do by trying, and they do by failing. They do so by experimenting and playing with other children and seeing what that thing does, and then try again. And if it's not interesting, they move on to something else. So I really like the idea of thinking like a child, and as an adult trying to get out of that academic mindset and just be playful and have fun. So try to find a little bit of that spark in your life and with your students, and try to explore and wonder alongside your children. So that brings me to a question, Eva, and now that your daughter is approaching that school age time, right? You're probably thinking about what that school experience will be like, and any parent is concerned about the future of education for their child. But let me ask you this question, Eva, and I want you to just decide whether you agree or not. But do you think that your child's learning should be meaningful, joyful, socially interactive, actively engaging, and iterative, which means that they would learn concepts and build, it's kind of like in a spiral over and over again until they master it?
Yes, 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 and yes, yes.
Yes.
Yes. all to 5. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes to meaningful, yes to joyful, yes to socially interactive, yes to actively engaging, and yes to iterative.
Right.
Learning.
Do you think that any parent in their right mind would disagree with these?
No.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so either. Like everybody wants the best for their kids, right? And they want these things. This is kind of like what a quality education experience should look like. Well, what if I was to tell you that through several corroborated research efforts, that the best way for students to experience all of these things is actually through play.
Mhm.
Yeah, play. Play is what provides meaningful experiences. Play is what is joyful. Play is socially interactive. Play is actively engaging, and it's iterative because you try things over and over again and until things work around. And so this image that I'm showing you here comes from the Lego pedagogy of play. And who better to research the theories of play than Lego, the largest manufacturer of toys on the planet. So they have a vested interest in the outcomes of, what does it mean to play? And so, if we were to re-envision learning to be more of a playful experiment than sit down and listen to me experience, I think that we would find that students will be naturally inclined to participate. So the research also goes on to show that when students are engaged in play and are experiencing all of these, that the bonus benefits are that students are increasing their social ability, cognitive ability, emotional, creative, and physical abilities. So would you agree, Eva, that you also want your child to have strong physical, social, cognitive, emotional, and creative abilities?
Yeah, it just seems like almost common sense.
It does. It is common sense. But, I think that oftentimes in education, we have like an antithetical experience. We have an experience where we have to sit down, listen, read the book, follow along, obey the teacher, go to the next class, and play ends up only happening for 15 minutes after lunch or 15 minutes after school. So, that's 30 minutes a day of this experience that we believe in so much. And so I'm not saying that we should just ditch all classes and everybody play in the playground, but I think that there are a lot more opportunities where we can shift our way of teaching and learning to be more playful. It doesn't always have to be playful. I realize that sometimes we got to learn things, and sometimes that means we're going to use paper, pencil, chalkboards, computers, or whatever. But I think there's always room for the flexibility of play. And so play is deeply rooted in the idea of constructionism and hard fun. It's challenging, but it's fun, it's joyful, it's interactive, it's meaningful. All of these things are deeply related to constructionism. So the last important part about constructionism is that anytime that students are learning, anytime that they are doing an activity or they're playing, they should always reflect on that process, because this is where the real learning happens, is by reflection, thinking about what you've just done. And Seymour Papert has a famous quote, and he says, "You can't think about thinking without thinking about something," which is kind of this nonsensical iterative loop of a sentence in itself. Yeah, I mean, I think this is important, and we also do this at BSD, where we always build in some kind of a reflection instrument where we ask, why are we doing this? Like you mentioned earlier, Eva, always asking why. Could there be other ways to solve the problems? What did we learn? What can we take away from this experience? If we had to do it over again, what would be different? Those kind of reflective questions are actually the most important part of the entire process, because that's where you start to concretize the loose information that's in your brain that you experienced during a project, for example. So when you're learning and when you're constructing, you're going through this iterative cycle, and you have all of this knowledge. And then it's only when you reflect on that knowledge do you bring it all together and connect the dots and say, aha, this is like this. Aha, this is like that. This relates to that. Next time I'm going to do it like this. And so reflection is probably the most important and critical component of constructionism. So, even if you're not following a full constructionist approach, I think it's very easy for any teacher to build in reflection moments at the end of an activity, the end of a lesson, and so on. And so, Eva, what's your experience with students and connecting the dots through reflections?
I think oftentimes at the end of the class, as teachers, you want to be checking for knowledge, but the reflection point, like you said, it's really when they understand and make that connection. It's almost like that bridge that helps them understand, oh, so that's why you kept asking us to define empathy, I don't know, in design thinking, for example, like,
Yeah.
and why that's important. And I think that's when they get those light bulb moments, and suddenly a concept that they might not have found to be important to them or matters to them or related to them in any way, they suddenly think like, oh, it does apply to my life in some way. It does, even asking like, oh, why is empathy important in design thinking, for example, then once they unpack that for themselves, they begin to see like, oh, so it's because if we design products only we think are cool and important, no one would care about the products that we make.
Right.
So it's just emphasizing those little moments and helping them make those connections really change the way that they see the learning that they're doing with us.
Yes, I agree. And I think the students that you're mentioning, you said earlier that that after their high school level course with BSD, these students took the knowledge and skills that they learned, and then they went and started their own business designing websites as a design consultancy. So I bet somewhere in their minds, they reflected after a lesson and they thought, wait a minute, I could do this. Wait a minute, I could turn this into a business. Wait a minute, I could make money doing this. Okay, and they connected the dots. They put it all together, and then they did, and they went out and started their own design firm, which is like the ultimate, like approval story of our approach of constructionism. That it leads to tangible results where students can actually do things and not just talk about it from the textbook.
Yeah. I think some questions or challenges would be like, oh, what about universities, like coming from parents or schools? These students are also pursuing passion areas in college now. So it's not just like, oh, I can apply this in a kind of more vocational personal space, but they're also applying in higher education as well.
You can have your cake and eat it too. Get the degree, start the job. They will be on the right path. All right. Let me continue on as we're. I don't know what. I haven't even looked at the clock. How we're doing on time, but I want to talk just a little bit more about proven pedagogical approaches that we have kind of articulated at BSD. So, I mentioned that the root of all of our thinking around how we develop curriculum is about constructionism. But what we've done is combine that with other elements to build a successful product, which for us, we don't really measure our ability at BSD by how many schools we sell our curriculum to, but we measure by student agency, which the example we gave earlier is the pinnacle of that. The students are able to walk away from our curriculum with tangible skills that they can relate to themselves and to the world around them. But the way we get there is we start off with constructionism, learning by doing. Then we teach students real coding, not just block-based coding, but they learn actual programming languages. We also combine those with other skills like the soft skills, which we integrate like project management and time management and how to conduct empathy and so on. You add all that together with this magic sauce that we've created, and the outcome is that students are liberated and able to carry their knowledge forward and do cool stuff with it, which is part of the reason why we call our company Build Something Different, because it's really a different model than the current education system, and we've had a lot of great success and benefits with that. Some other things that kind of drive our thinking about how we approach education and what we think is important for the modern learner. We think that learning should be experiential and hands-on always. We know and we have seen through research that students learn best when they're immersed in a project. So all of our curriculum is designed around different projects and different themes. We always think that students should know why they're doing something instead of being told to do something. We believe that students should learn at their own pace. So our curriculum has student flexibility to go faster or slower. We believe that help should always be within reach, so students can always access help to their teacher. If teachers get stuck, they can come out and ask us at BSD, and we're there to help. And then lastly, it all has to look slick. It has to look really good so that you're encouraged to continue. So we believe that good user interface and user experience is what keeps kind of the grease in the wheels for all the rest of it. If you want to learn a lot more about how we develop this theory and kind of the details of that, you can take a look at our curriculum development process, which is a guide that we've published and has been verified by the Digital Promise Product Certificate in the United States, which verifies curriculum for their research-based practices. So if you want to kind of nerd out on the research and the links and all of the elements that went into how we design our curriculum, our platform, and our product, you can look at this guide. So Eva, if you could share the link out to our participants, they can access this guide and learn a lot more about the details of our specific curriculum development processes. And then I'm going to turn it over to Eva to wrap up this webinar and tell you about some free opportunities that we have at BSD so that you can get involved and explore our constructionist approach. So Eva, you can take over the screen.
Great. Thank you so much, Mark. I feel like this webinar and on the topic of constructionism, like we can go on to have a full seminar or like a full convention about it.
Yeah, really could.
The conversation can go on. So yeah, I just wanted to share with you different ways to work with us and also access our awesome curriculum. I do encourage you just to give it a try through our free trial and our free projects through Start. You can sign up, you get access to 4 hours of great interactive coding projects. That includes websites, a trivia game maker, and these use the coding languages, the markup languages of like HTML, CSS, and also coding with JavaScript as well. Different ways to also bring us into your school. We have the Teach model, which is a single teacher plan. It's only $12.50 US dollars per month, and it includes up to 30 student accounts. And if you want the full access to the full 600-hour of certified curriculum, and with our support and professional development and training, you're welcome to speak with us about our build subscription options as well. So Mark has shared the link to Start, and I'll encourage you to start today. All right, thank you so much, Mark, for sharing your knowledge, your wisdom about constructionism. I really enjoyed it myself, and as always, learned something new.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
Did we have any audience questions?
Yes, one moment. Good call. All right. Ooh, I think the audience would love to learn more about how can I learn more about constructionism?
Well, I think the best place to start is actually the link that I shared earlier to the articles that I wrote, because inside of those 3 articles, there is like several links to other things and supporting evidence and that kind of stuff. But if you really want to take an even deeper dive, then you've got to go to the source material. And the source material, you would be best to start with the 1980 publication of Mindstorms by Seymour Papert. And there's been a couple of reprints of that book, so you can find whichever version of it is available. It's also been translated to several different languages. But yeah, go to the source and then make the decision from yourself, like Seymour Papert would have wanted.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's all we have for today.
Awesome. All right. That sounds great.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop recording now.